Hey everyone, so jumping right into the update for today, over the last year, Americans have received around $2,000 in relief payments. These come from the bill President Trump signed into law in December of 2020, in addition to the American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed into law this year. However, in August, and what we could see happen over the next couple of months, is the IRS sending letters to some Americans letting them know to pay back this money. One woman in Massachusetts, we'll call her Natalie, says she received a letter from the IRS demanding she pay back the $600 in relief payments that she claimed on her 2020 tax return, plus $3.12 in interest. After receiving the first relief payment of $1,200, she moved to Massachusetts, which means the second payment of $600 got sent to her old address. Since she never received the money, she had to claim the $600 payment on her tax returns. So apparently, in her case at least, the IRS must believe she actually received the check in the mail and had already cashed it. That, or perhaps, someone received her check and cashed it illegally. Since receiving this letter, Natalie has tried contacting the IRS on numerous occasions, but unfortunately, as many of us have found, it's not always the easiest to get in touch with one of their representatives. So she never got an answer, and since then, an IRS spokesperson said that anyone in a similar situation should fill out Form 3911 in order to request a payment trace. So with that said, let me know in the comment section below if anyone else is receiving a similar letter and how you deal with the situation. In some other news, Bernie Sanders hosted a town hall in Indiana where he discussed a couple of different pieces of legislation that are currently being discussed in Congress. The first being the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is mostly based on the physical infrastructure you normally think about, roads and bridges.
Now, the first piece of legislation, I was not deeply involved in it, others were, but the first piece of legislation, which has already passed the Senate, is a bipartisan infrastructure bill that will invest $550 billion in new money to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. Now, I don't know what's going on in Indiana, but I have no reason to believe that it's any different than Vermont and other states where our roads, you're laughing, I guess it is as bad here as elsewhere, huh? But it's bad all over this country in terms of our roads that are crumbling, our bridges, our water systems. One of the things that amazed me is I've gone all over this country. You may not know it, but there are millions of people who, when they turn on the tap in their kitchen, they cannot drink the water. Do you all know that? I mean, it's really quite unbelievable. So you got water systems that need repair. You got our wastewater plants that need repair. We want to expand broadband. A few miles outside of the state capital in Vermont, Montpelier, Vermont, hard to make an internet connection. And that's true all over this country. We're investing in public transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So that bill will do what has been talked about for years.
So Senator Sanders said in this bill, if eventually passed, will do what has been talked about for years. Then of course we have the other much larger reconciliation bill, which is just about as far from bipartisan as we can get. Mostly every, if not all Democrats are on board with the plan, with not a single Republican being for it. This one differs a lot from the physical infrastructure bill, as this one deals more with, I guess you can say, human infrastructure. Senator Sanders touches base on this bill and how he hopes it'll help the American people.
Now is the time for the United States to lead the world against the existential threat of climate change. Working families coast to coast are struggling to put food on the table and to take care of their families. Today in America, over 90 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. We lose some 60,000 people a year who don't get to the doctor when they should because they can't afford health care and because we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription. Today in America, the wealthiest country on earth, some 600,000 Americans are sleeping out on the street and do not have a place they can call home. And I got to tell you that in Washington, D.C., literally 2 blocks from the Capitol, there is a tent encampment of homeless people. Working parents throughout the country are receiving a monthly check of $300. If we do not pass this legislation, those checks will end at the end of this year. That was an emergency bill that we passed, the American Rescue Plan. What we are trying to do and will do in this bill is extend those payments for working parents so they can continue to raise their kids with dignity. So what this legislation will do is move toward making sure that no family in America pays more than 7% of their income for child care. And for lower income families, child care will be free. We are going to make pre-K education, kids 3 and 4 years old, universal and free. We are not there yet in this legislation, but it will guarantee 3 weeks of paid family and medical leave. What's in this legislation is 2 years of free tuition at community colleges all across this country. Under this legislation that we're talking about, we are going to make the largest investment in low-income and affordable housing in the history of the United States. We are going to make a massive investment in home health care. We're going to make it easier for older people and people with disabilities who want to stay in their own homes, get the help they need in their homes rather than force them into nursing homes. And further, this bill will make the most significant improvements in Medicare that we have seen in over 50 years. But as President Biden made absolutely clear, under this legislation, no family in America making less than $400,000 a year will pay a nickel more in federal taxes.
So Sanders is obviously a huge fan of both pieces of legislation. With that said, even though the Senate has already passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill, it's unlikely they'll be holding a vote in the House on that bill until they first vote on the reconciliation bill. Right now, even though centrist Democrats are hoping to get the bipartisan bill signed into law as quickly as possible, the more progressive Democrats are looking to hold it hostage until they first pass the much larger reconciliation bill. So we should definitely have quite the eventful month ahead. In some other news, President Biden has recently been receiving a lot of heat, not just over the withdrawal in Afghanistan and how that was handled, but also by the parents of our soldiers who sadly died in the Kabul airport suicide attack. President Biden met with the parents of U.S. soldiers who were sadly taken way too soon on that day, and some of those parents are saying the meeting really didn't go all that well.
It didn't go well. He talked a bit more about his own son than he did my son, and that didn't sit well with me.
In reference to the checking of his watch, that didn't happen just once. That happened on every single one that came out of that airplane.
I couldn't look at him anymore after that, just considering especially the time and why we were there. It was, I found to be the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen.
So obviously the president didn't give their parents a very good impression. And I'll see you in the next.